there, reception children, it's Mr Yeardsley on another sunny day, sat outside, going to read you a story, going to read you another story by your featured author, Eric Carl. It's called Mr Seahorse. And Eric always does something a bit different with his pages of the books we've read so far, doesn't he? I wonder what he'll do this time. Mr and Mrs Seahorse drifted gently through the sea. Mrs Seahorse began to wriggle and twist, this way and that way. "It's time for me to lay my eggs," she said. "Can I help?" asked Mr Seahorse. "Oh yes, thank you," said Mrs Seahorse. And she laid her eggs in a pouch on Mr Seahorse's belly. "I'll take good care of our eggs," said Mr Seahorse. "I promise." Pouch on his belly there. As Mr Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... Have a look, can you see anything in there? Oh, it looks like weeds to me. Oh, look, it's got a clear page. Let's turn the page and see what's hidden. A group of trumpet fish hidden in a patch of reeds. Did you see what happened? With a clear page. See the reeds there, and then behind the reeds, there are the trumpet fish. It's quite clever, isn't it? But before long, Mr Seahorse met another fish. "How are you doing, Mr Stickleback?" asked Mr Seahorse. "Delighted," replied Mr Stickleback. "I've just built a nest, and right away Mrs Stickleback laid her eggs in it. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "Keep up the good work," said Mr Seahorse, and he swam on his way. As Mr Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... Can you see anything in there? Should we turn the clear page? A lionfish hidden behind a coral reef. Same colour, aren't they? But before long, Mr Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr Tilapia?" asked Mr Seahorse. Mr Tilapia couldn't answer. His mouth was full of eggs. I know," said Mr Seahorse. "Mrs Tilapia has laid her eggs. Now you are taking good care of them until they hatch." Mr Tilapia nodded his head. "You must be very happy," said Mr Seahorse, and he swam on his way. As Mr Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... Ooh, what can you see in the seaweed? What do you think it might be? A pair of leaf fish hidden amongst the seaweed. But before long, Mr Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr Curtis?" asked Mr Seahorse. "Perfectly fine," said Mr Curtis. "Mrs Curtis has laid her eggs and I've stuck them on my head. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You're doing a good job," said Mr Seahorse, and swam on his way. Upside down that time. As Mr Seahorse drifted gently through the sea, he passed right by... something behind a rock. Should we have a look and see? A stonefish hidden behind a rock. Looks a bit grumpy, doesn't he? But before long, Mr Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr Pipe?" asked Mr Seahorse. "Couldn't be better," replied Mr Pipe. "Mrs Pipe has laid her eggs along my belly. Now I'm taking good care of them until they hatch." "You should feel proud of yourself," said Mr Seahorse, and swam on his way. But before long, Mr Seahorse met another fish. "How are you, Mr Bullhead?" asked Mr Seahorse. "Tip-top," replied Mr Bullhead. "Mrs Bullhead laid her eggs. The eggs hatched. Now I'm babysitting." "You're doing a great job," said Mr Seahorse, and swam on his way. time had come for the Seahorse babies to be born. Mr Seahorse wriggled and twisted this way and that. At last the babies tumbled out of Mr Seahorse's pouch and swam away. One baby turned around and tried to get back into the pouch. "Oh no," said Mr Seahorse, "I do love you, but now you're ready to be on your own." And there they are, swimming off. In most fish families, boys and girls, after the mums laid the eggs, the fathers fertilise them, the eggs are left on their own to hatch. But some fishes, like seahorses and stickleback and curtis and nursery fish and pipefish and bullhead and catfish, the dads help look after the eggs in some way. So I hope you're being looked after well by everybody in your family at home, and you're remembering our school motto: if you see someone without a smile, give them one of yours, and you keep on smiling.